So I've given you this picture. So this episode, we are going to talk about your innate defenses. So we're going to talk about the surface barriers. I want you to think about that as your first line of defense. So think about skin, your mucous membranes, keep them out. If a pathogen penetrates the skin and those surface barriers, then we've got the second line of defense. And these are going to be our internal defenses. So our non-specific phagocytic cells, natural killer cells, inflammation, antimicrobial proteins, and then fever all fall under innate defenses, so innate immune system, second line of defense, internal defenses. Last episode, we'll talk about the adaptive defenses, so the adaptive immune response that's specific. It's only brought about by those lymphocytes. So you have humoral immunity by those B lymphocytes and cellular immunity by those T cells. But this episode, we're going to talk about this up here. All right, so just an overview of the innate immune system.
The immune system's first defense is our skin, the largest organ of our body. The skin covers a total area of about 2 square meters, the size of a typical basketball backboard. When microbes attack, they're routinely deflected by the skin. Inside our bodies, mucous membranes are slimy, warm surfaces that make up about 400 square meters, roughly the size of an entire basketball court. They're under constant attack from microbes in the air we breathe and the food we eat. They line our nose, throat, intestines, and reproductive tracts. That's a large area to defend. Your mucous membranes are going to need help. Fortunately, certain cells in your body have evolved to fend off microscopic attackers. Early responders, like this macrophage, identify invaders and attack. They also give off chemical signals, called cytokines, to call up reinforcements like neutrophils and natural killer cells. Macrophages, neutrophils, and natural killer cells, collectively referred to as innate immunity, are nonspecific, often sacrificing healthy tissue to contain an infection. But if the invader slips through, you're going to need a more targeted defense.
And that would be your lymphocytes. Okay, so first line of defense. So skin and mucous membranes, their roles are to prevent microbe entry. So just kind of reminding you, so you have your skin, that's going to be your cutaneous membrane, so your outer skin, and then your internal passageways are lined by mucosa. So any place you can stick your fingers inside that feels warm and wet, that is going to be mucosa. So digestive tract, respiratory tract, and urogenital tract. So I gave you a table in your notes, but I'm just going to kind of give you something to look at. I don't really like just kind of talking through a table. But skin, hopefully remember that from AP1. It is amazing. It is an amazing surface barrier when it is intact. Almost impossible to breach. Sadly, often we have like little tiny tears, or sometimes microbes can get in through pores. But remember, the overall secretions of the skin are going to be acidic. So that was called the acid mantle. So sweat, sebum, make that surface acidic, so about pH 4, 4.5. So most bacteria don't grow well in acidic pH. Also, your skin secretes antibacterial chemicals, dermacidin, so dermicidal. So dermacidin in sweat kills bacteria. It is keratinized, so remember keratin is that tough hydrophobic protein, which makes it resistant to chemicals, bacteria, enzymes, and toxins. Also, that upper layer, your epidermis, so stratum corneum, is constantly flaking off. And so when it flakes off and sloughs off, it takes the bacteria with it. And hair also serves as a trap. So intact mucosa lining all those body cavities. Mucus is protected. So I don't know if you remember those little goblet cells making mucus. secreting it out onto a surface. And so things get stuck in mucus, and then this is your upper respiratory tract and there's cilia. And so you breathe in viruses, bacteria, it gets stuck in the mucus, and then these cilia are going to row, and then you're going to swallow them. And then once it gets to the stomach, there's a pH of about 2, and that pretty much takes care of most things. Vaginal secretions are acidic, so about the pH of a tomato, so about 4. So that's going to inhibit the growth of bacteria and fungi. Think about it, urine is normally acidic, and it's going to exit about 20 mils per second. So it flushes and cleans the urinary tract as that occurs. Gastric juice, really, really acidic. So we have these sort of chemical barriers and fluid barriers because once again, microbes have to stick. So we've got fluid movement and also some chemicals there. They're going to make it very difficult for bacteria to grow. Both skin and mucosa, lysozyme destroys microorganisms. It pokes holes in bacterial cell walls. We have lysozyme in sweat, tears, and saliva. Defensins are just a group of antimicrobial peptides, and when we have a breach in our walls, we're going to talk about inflammation, then we get this greater secretion of those defensins. And so those are just proteins secreted onto the surface of the mucosa and also onto the skin that are antimicrobial. Yep, nasal hairs. Not just attract to mate, no they are not. So hair acts as a trap for microbes. Yeah, so I gave you this, so definitely study this, it's in your Quizlet. Defensins, dermicide, and lysozyme are all defensive antimicrobial chemicals. So hopefully that made sense to you. One more thing, also on your skin and also lining all of your openings open to the outside, we have what are called normal microbiota or normal flora. So these are normal bacteria, fungi that they live there, but they don't do any harm. So think about it. Is it easier to break into and invade a house that's empty or a house that's occupied? Hopefully you said the empty house is easier. So what bacteria do for us, they're not making us sick, so these are non-pathogenic, but they are taking up space for attachment. They're also taking up nutrients. They too will secrete antimicrobial proteins that are effective against other microbes to defend their space. What can happen in hospital settings frequently when broad spectrum antibiotics are used is that it wipes out all of the good bacteria, leaving a dysbiosis or imbalance, and so bad bacteria can grow. And so Clostridium difficile causes C. diff, so horrible pseudomembranous diarrhea, colitis, and so that often occurs. So normal flora, they're also part of that first line of defense. Don't let them in.